Hello, and welcome to What Makes This Run So Great. This is an ongoing series where we break down and dissect some winning stages. And I'm super pumped. I have my teammate, Joey Sauerland, here with me today, reigning USPSA Limited National Champion. I was so excited I got my hair cut. Joey, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Travis. I'm excited to talk about these stages. It should be pretty spicy.
Yes, I'm really pumped about it. And today we are covering something we haven't done yet, which is part-time stages.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
what I've noticed is over the last, past season at least, that you typically dominate the part-time stages and you do it in combined fashion, meaning you're running iron sights, major power factor, and you take the combined stage win. So I think you are the guy that we need to listen to.
Boom. Well, I appreciate that. I've got definitely got some things to say about it. So let's pick one and let's watch the whole thing full speed first, and then we'll start talking about it.
That sounds great. We will start with
Uh,
Joey, we have the Nationals. This is a handgun Nationals part-time stage, I believe.
yes, Handgun Nationals 2024.
Okay, excellent. Let's go. Let's take a look at this. Woo! Oh, you had plenty
Boom.
of time.
Yes, yes. So that's the first thing that I'd like to note is on most of these part-time stages. The next one we're going to look at was uniquely challenging to complete within the part-time. Most part-time stages I end up wishing that I had taken, not that it's a problem to have done it quickly, but I usually end up wishing that I'd taken more time. My speed is actually usually in excess of the part-time, and that speed is what I want to do, what I want to spend a lot of time talking about. That speed and that speed in training. So let's take the video back to the beginning
Yeah.
and let's start with just the draw. I think that draw to first shot was closer to 1.5 than it was to 1. So that was not fast.
Okay.
So let's look at that real quick.
Yeah.
I think that was probably like 1.2 or 1.3. Uh, Not particularly fast. I don't think I have a particularly fast draw, and it's probably something I could train and make more progress on and save more time on. But um, Mike Huang made this point to me one time: is that you draw your gun once on a stage, and especially for a stage like this part-time stage that goes by very quickly and is pretty short, that's the grip you're going to have for the entire stage. So even if you save zero point 0.2 or zero point 0.3 off the draw, you might be paying for that in your transitions and your splits for the rest of the entire stage. So it's all the in between parts between here and between that last target that I want to talk about. So
Really good point on the
the
draw. And and
yeah,
and putting the effort into getting a really good grip on the gun, you're stuck with this and you don't really have time to be managing it through the stage, trying to get a better grip or to deal with the less than ideal grip. So
right,
invest the attention and intention into getting a good grip right from the get-go.
big time. This the rest of this stage, I want to go ahead and just jump right into talking about training because that's really what this is about. Yeah, okay. So I shot the stage really well. It was a all divisions combined stage win. Um, and I had plenty of leftover time after the beep, despite not having a particularly fast draw. So we got that discussed already. I want to start talking about the training that I do that makes that something I can do every single time a part-time stage shows up at a match and win the combined on the part-time stage every single time. That's what the people want to hear. That's why we're here.
Yes, that would be absolutely tremendous because then it's
So
repeatable.
exactly, exactly. So I do, as a lot of people already know, I'm a big dry fire guy. Do lots of dry fire training, and especially, I'm actually writing an article for the USPSA magazine that talks about this a little bit more in depth. But the what movement accomplishes in our sport, I think is mainly two things. One, it gets the gun where it needs to be next, and two, it has it ready to fire when it gets there. So we kind of talked about this on that last stage that we had that we talked about that we looked at that combined stage win from the Caribbean Open about just putting the gun on the next target and not generating any extra physical effort or any extra movement that I then have to undo in between. This is very much the same thing. How quickly can I simply put the gun on the next target? So let's, with kind of that same vibe, assuming most of the people listening to this listen to that last one, let's watch it from the top and let's pay attention just to the pistol itself and how much time it spends being run somewhere and how much time it spends going from where it's finishing on one target straight to the next target. Let's watch it.
Beautiful. For our viewers, we are focused on the gun.
Boom. So there's only really two parts where for a moment the gun breaks its engagement of targets to be moved around a little bit as my arms are kind of, my arms are moving to be conducive to the movement of my body, but that's pretty much always at a minimum. My eyes are already on the next target, and all I'm trying to do, and I'll, I'll come back to that in one sec. All I'm trying to do is get the sights of the gun on the next target. And when I say all I'm trying to do, what I really mean is that's all that's happening because this is still a subconscious stage performance, right? So for the people listening, whether you've heard it described or not, subconscious shooting is some of your best shooting, right? So your conscious mind can do one, you can think about one thing at a time. So if you're trying to go fast, that's the one thing you're going to do, and that's probably the one thing you're going to get at the expense of everything else, right? If you want to shoot perfect all alphas, you'll probably get that at the expense of everything else. So shooting subconsciously, your subconscious mind can do 10,000 things at a time. And that's what we're trying to have our shooting be. Everything can just happen at the same time without me having to focus on one thing or another thing. And so because I've done so much dry fire movement training built around just that, getting the gun where it needs to go, and that's very much a speed mode training thing. So whenever I'm training that, it's on a par time. And if I can get the gun where it needs to go, if I can get that next sight picture where the next sight picture needs to be in that par time, then I drop that par time down and I start working on that par time. Any piece of movement. And so like this stage right here was very movement wise was very simple. There was some walls with ports and you travel left to right. And then at the end you run forward. Really it's an incredibly simple stage movement wise. There's no awkward leans. There's no tough positions. There's no reversing around corners. There's no retreating. Movement wise is a very simple stage. And so I've probably done in my training for sure thousands. I think it's pretty likely tens of thousands of pieces of movement moving laterally left or right across walls or forward and back on a par time, making those movements faster. And so when I shot this stage, I knew that there was a par time. And I think what the par time does for most people is the par time puts them in speed mode, the way that I am in my training, right? So when I'm in my
Agreed.
speed mode dry fire training, I'm not being distracted by hits on paper. I'm not having to load magazines in between. As soon as I finish a rep, I reset and I say, it's going to have to be faster than that one. The gun's going to need to get where it needs to go sooner than that. And I do it again and again and again. So when I'm on a par time stage, I actually have extra confidence because I know, this pulling the trigger faster might make it a tiny bit faster, but if I dropped all my splits on this stage by, 10 hundredths, if these 15 to 25 splits went down to fives and 15s, right? I would have left probably multiple mics and penalties. I think there was no shoots on 3 or 4 different targets on this stage, right? That would have been garbage. It's impossible to save that time. But getting the gun where it needs to go and the movement that's required for that made this stage easy for me. I knew that, man, moving this gun to where it needs to be next on the next target, this is something I've done realistically probably tens of thousands of times in speed mode training, right? Where I'm trying to get it faster. I'm trying to get the gun there sooner. I'm trying to beat the par time. And so this speed of just putting the gun where it needs to go next is very normal for me. So I think sometimes on other stages, there might be some percentage more speed that I used on this stage. Maybe there was an additional, if the normal baseline is zero, if the normal baseline of effort to be fast is zero, because I'm shooting subconsciously and because of my training, I simply am fast. So I'm not trying to go fast, I just am fast because of my training. I think maybe on this part time stage, maybe at most, there was an extra 10 to 15% of what we'll call effort into being fast. And more than effort, I think that was more than effort to be fast. It was more of a resignation to the fact that I'm not going to slow down. Whereas normally on a field course, especially when there's partial target, there's a slight degree more of I need to leave only acceptable hits. But knowing that on this stage, if I pass a port and I think there's a miss on a target, if I go back to the port for it, I'm going to miss an entire another target or two at the end of the stage because it's a part-time stage. So I don't think it's actually effort to go fast. I think it's just a little bit more acceptance and resignation to I'm not going to stop. But the speed itself of getting that gun where it needs to go, completely normal. Completely normal for me to do that without any effort in making it fast. And yeah, that's the meat and potatoes of it. That's the
I
meat and
like it.
potatoes of it.
Joey, and I would say you've made an important distinction between pushing or trying to go fast and
Hmm.
not resigning to slowing down.
Yeah,
There's a huge difference in terms of how you're approaching the stage between those two.
big time.
And certainly, as I watch you, I brought it up in slow motion with a little tighter crop here. And I want to watch the gun again. I want to notice that you're not particularly in a hurry.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Okay. And I think that's also an important distinction. I'm going to go ahead and play it here.
That gun was ready when it arrived right there.
That's right. Here's the longest movement. Excellent. I should say the longest movement without actively seeking a target, so to speak. When you're
Yeah.
going through, yeah, the lateral part, bring that back up. The lateral part of the stage, you are actively seeking and hunting out A zones to engage. And a cool thing I noticed on the front first position, we have two targets in the first port. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
Uh-huh.
Um, okay, and it maybe has a 3 yard separation between these two. You start on the right target, slightly. Maybe your feet are slightly biased towards the right, and that's going to
Towards the
allow
right
you
side of the port. Yep.
the right side of the port. Okay, and that allows you, um, in my opinion, to get to the next position better because we can see your torso. Let me go back to this beginning here. Yeah, and the gun stays up and you're already on. Notice your trail foot is still in the air. You're already engaging the first target in the next array.
Yep.
So, and now here
And
you're
that's
looking. Yeah,
and that's because, and again, it's not something I'm trying to do during the stage. It's something that I've made normal for myself. It's a normal behavior for me with the gun to simply put it on the next target. And so it'd be very easy to consume an extra, I think the par time on this stage was, I don't know what it was. Is it like 8 seconds or something? Does it seem like it's eight
yes,
seconds?
that sounds right. Yeah, somewhere
Whatever,
around
whatever
there.
it is, it's
Yeah,
definitely high single digits of seconds, whether it's seven and a half or 8.3 or 9 or whatever.
that's right. It
Um,
was under 10.
right, but it would be so easy, and it is very normal for a lot of people to shoot those two targets through that first position, that first port, and then stop what you're doing with the gun, run to the right, and generate some extra physical effort and speed, and then have to use more physical effort to grind that speed to a stop when all that needed to happen, and it adds up so quick. If I was to bring that gun down to chest height, pump my arms, even if it was one step, right? I'm talking about one jut step to the right, where I drop the gun, drive my elbows, jut one leg out to the right, and then engage that next target, I think that would easily add a second to this stage that, that I spent 7 point something seconds shooting. I think you could easily add a second there, and that's probably the smallest piece of movement between targets on this stage. And I think you could easily add 1 second to it by, instead of just putting the gun on the next target, running over there to engage the next target. No matter how fast you try and run, you're making this extra running, this extra physical effort that's, it feels fast when you do it. Trying hard to run fast feels fast, but it takes more time.
Yeah, awesome point.
Yeah.
And Joe, can I bring up? I'm just going to play this again. This position here. Let's say we have a B class viewer watching, and he's like, "Okay, I understand what he means," and he's not breaking the gun down. He's not bringing it down to his stomach. All I'm trying to do is move as fast as possible. In the walkthrough, how can a shooter in the walkthrough start to find these areas where you know what I mean? Like approaching
Yeah.
this right here. Would you have
Yeah.
any tips on that? Approaching that in the walkthrough so they can program this?
Big time. So I think the way you phrased that question was really good, because you pointed out that, I'm not bringing the gun down, I'm keeping the gun up. So what can I do in my stage plan and my visualization and my walking the stage to try and make that happen? I think that's the right way to approach it, right? So if I'm teaching someone about movement and my instructions are keep the gun up, that doesn't make my hit factor higher. Keeping the gun up doesn't make my hit factor higher. What should happen is, because in your movement training, your definition of success is getting the gun where it needs to go, which is usually on a target, right? The most efficient path for the gun tends to involve keeping the gun up. So keeping the gun up should be the byproduct of your
Ah,
good definition of success in your movement training. And so this, as opposed to, it's it's a little, if you tell someone to if I tell someone to keep the gun up, to me that sounds a little bit like the tail wagging the dog a little bit.
mhm,
You
mhm.
know,
Good. Yeah.
when keeping the gun up is something that should happen because you're doing something else. That's not what you should be thinking about and focused on during the stage. You've got targets to engage and positions to arrive at, and you're thinking about, oh, keep the gun up.
That's
That's a distraction.
right.
If in my mind, that's just
Great.
a complete distraction from what you should be doing, right? That's something that needs to be made normal. And even in your training, I think that should be a byproduct of how you're training. I don't think that should be something that you go work on intentionally, keeping the gun up, right? Keeping the gun up isn't inherently good. That doesn't make your hit factor higher. Keeping the gun up, I think, is a pretty natural byproduct of focusing on getting the gun where it needs to go next and having it ready to fire when it gets there. That will become normal when you do a very high volume of reps, and especially for movement, when you're working on movement training, when you're working on those two things, getting it where it needs to go, having it ready when it gets there. I really can't come up with a good reason to distract yourself with live rounds when you're training that. I
Mhm.
I can't come up with a good reason for it, right? It's going to cost more money. It's going to take more time to load magazines, pace targets. I just can't justify working on getting the gun where it needs to go, having it ready when it gets there, and shooting live rounds. I think it's, and I don't, I'm not even saying, that, oh, it's more cost effective to do it in dry fire. No, it's more effective to do it in dry fire. You'll make more progress. Dry fire is not just something that you're going to do because you can't afford to do more live fire. Dry fire is the better tool for that thing. It's the superior tool for that thing. Um,
Very well
anyway,
said. Yes,
yeah.
very well said. And can I just sort of back that up, Joe, with something I've noticed with students and in training is that a lot of these techniques and these concepts that we're discussing, live ammo is a distraction and can distract you from where your focus needs to be. It's loud, it's bang, and you're preoccupied with the results on the target versus what am I doing back here? Or what am I doing visually?
So much so. I can't stress that enough. If anybody listening to this thinks about something that they got really, really, really good at in the past, So like for me, I never did any sports when I was really young, but I played Xbox a lot. And when you get really good, when I got really good at playing Xbox, it's the only other thing that I ever really got good at in my life. Um, Except for bodybuilding, I was good at that.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Awesome.
when I got really good at playing Call of Duty on the Xbox, I got really good when I just got comfortable in, I'm going to call it training. It's not training. I'm playing multiplayer on Xbox. I'm playing Nazi zombies. But
Mhm.
when I got really comfortable screwing around, not worrying about the results, that's when I made the most progress. Right? So if you want to get faster
Yeah.
and you've generated this loud and expensive feedback system that as soon as you do something that's unnaturally fast for you, tells you you're doing a bad job, right? If I'm shooting live rounds and
Mhm.
I'm doing it in speed mode, I'm training for unnatural speed. I'm shooting faster than I currently can so that I get faster and I start leaving unacceptable hits, which will happen if you're training in speed correctly, right? I mean, that's just the ultimate negative feedback system where you're spending money, you got a loud noise and a physical reaction that then is immediately telling you what you just did was unsuccessful because you've got a delta on this target and you're missing a shot on this target. And it's just it's a horrible feedback loop. And unless you really do have unlimited time and ammo, again, dry fire is not just something that you do because you can't afford to do more live fire or your range is an hour away. Dry fire is the better tool for training speed, in my opinion. And I say this, this isn't me boasting. This is legitimately interesting, and I use it to illustrate this point. When I made Grandmaster, I had a lifetime total rounds fired in practice, not at matches. And I've only been shooting for 2.5 years, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. So I hadn't shot that many matches. But my lifetime total round count in practice was about 12,500 when I made Grandmaster. And then when I
Funny.
won nationals, like I don't know, like a year and a half after that ish, my lifetime round count had more than doubled. It was up at 32,000. And it's
Which is
to
still
this
nothing.
to this day, I've still now this is boasting. This I brag about because I think it illustrates the point we were just talking about very well. I've never in my life done speed mode training, where the definition of success was doing something faster or beating a par time in live fire.
Really?
Never
Wow.
never a single round of ammo in my entire life. Now, I'm not saying that there's not something to be benefited from that. Jay Beal and I talked about this on the Hit Factor podcast, and he actually recommended it. Um, so, I mean, obviously, anytime that you do something in your training where you leave your comfort zone and do something you've never done before, that's obviously going to be beneficial to whatever degree or for whatever specific purpose. It's going to be beneficial. And so I will do it just as long as I feel like the lower hanging fruit is things like, you said earlier, my target acquisition, how
Mhm.
soon I let the gun go off once the gun arrives on the next target. Knowing that your sights have arrived on the target does not require live rounds.
That's
That's
right. That's
that's a
right.
skill that's a skill you can train in dry fire,
That's a
especially
good
if you
point.
want to do it outside your comfort zone of speed.
Mhm.
And yeah. So anyway, big dry fire guy. But let's watch that stage one more time to see if there's anything else specific that we need to break down before we move on to the other one.
Yes, absolutely. Let me start it from the beginning.
Yeah, running into my own brass. That's good.
Yeah, boy, that's an indicator.
Oh
Nice.
yeah.
Gun is up.
I want to look at the back right corner. And let's go one more time with also with a little more of that entry into that position. Between right here and when I start engaging the second targeter from here to finishing this position, I want everybody to watch my legs and my feet. All right, one more time. Let's take it back. And first, which we've already discussed, let's notice how my eyes first, then the gun, then my legs and my feet. In that order, those three things are happening. So my eyes are going to find the next target. I'm going to start putting the gun on that next target with no extra running in between. And if you look at where I am right here in this position, there's still plenty of ground to be covered. I do have to
Yeah,
come almost all the way to the fault line over here to shoot that second target in that position.
that's right.
But instead of stopping what I'm doing with the gun to run over there, I'm just going to put the gun on the next target. And so let's watch the transition. We'll see how the gun leads my movement. But then also, just want everybody to watch the little shuffle step that moves me just a little bit further to that next target, kind of between the two.
Okay.
Eyes, gun, feet, boom.
Beautiful.
So the point I want to make, so obviously that was that was kind of a super cool little shuffle step that got me from the first, that right there, that little bit right
Yes.
there, from the first one to the second one. Let's watch it one more
Yes.
time. I think too often people try to quantify and replicate tiny specific pieces of movement, right? This shuffle
Yes.
step, or this percentage rotation of your hips towards where you're going, or this cross step and this type of deceleration step and this much heel toe versus I don't have the mental bandwidth to process that kind of information. Certainly not on a stage, but if I'm being honest, also not in my training. All those tiny little bits of footwork are things that, again, I'm definitely not thinking about them on the stage, but even in my training, when I do movement training, I'm very much focused on, as soon as I know where the gun needs to go next, that's all I'm doing, right? It probably takes me about 1/100th of a second for my brain to switch from I'm done with this target to where's the gun going next. That takes no time for that switch. Everything that my body is doing is trying to conform to that goal. Now, how do you learn new movements and, learn like a little cool piece of foot, like I did that piece of footwork there without thinking about it at all. Wasn't in my stage plan, wasn't on my conscious mind, without thinking about it, without planning it out. How do you get to where you do stuff like that moves the gun just to where it needs to be with no thought at all instantly, right? That's what everybody wants. That just has to become normal in your training. So, one, volume is the key, right? The number of times in my dry fire movement training that I've done either that piece of footwork or something similar, it's some vast number. It's some vast number that I couldn't even guess at, but it's some very large number because my body has just my mind has produced so many movement patterns built around getting the gun where it needs to go. All my eyeballs in the gun have to do is find the next target and start putting the gun on it. My body has movement patterns that are built for that, and I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about that. Very rarely on a stage will I, plan out my footwork. Only if there's a position where I'm especially concerned about, stepping outside of the shooting area, or if there's an especially tough lean that I have to set up for, or something very specific that's challenging. Your movement training needs to be done in high volume so that the parts of your brain that decide and create movement, those are well adapted and well conditioned to conforming your movement instantly to putting the gun where it needs to be next. Movement has to be subconscious.
Big time. I love that, Joey. And also what you're talking about here, it's very adaptable, it's very fluid and dynamic. If they change the foot fault line on you, you're going to adapt subconsciously. You don't have to
Exactly.
program it. Sometimes
Exactly.
students will be like, well, I need to count steps between here and there, not to see if it's a shorter path, but I mean, in order to
Yeah.
land on the correct foot. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That is,
Way, way
yeah,
too much.
we
That's
do not
way too
have,
much.
yeah, we don't have the conscious bandwidth for that type of processing.
Yeah.
So that's what I love about this. And you described how through this extra step you took to get the inside target, you didn't think about it. To me, it's free flowing, it's dynamic. You adapt to the stage versus, well, trying to plug a certain thing in and then making this work. And oh my gosh, if
Right.
that's not the left foot there, I'm toast. Where you're like, No, your body did it for you.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm toast.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
gonna
big time. No,
happen?
I try and that's another reason. So, um, let me get a good historical quote here. I think it was German General Erich von Falkenhayn in
Mhm.
1914 when the Germans were going through Belgium on their way to France. He said, "Sweat saves blood."
Ooh,
Yeah, yeah,
love
yeah.
it.
We like that. We like that a lot.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so obviously, what that means is for them, that meant, yeah, you're really tired marching, but the enemy armies, are moving so fast that they can't keep up with us, and they don't have time to set up defensive positions, and we can just overrun their country as long as we keep moving. But we're going to have to sweat, but it's going to save us blood. Same thing here on the stage. If you
Hmm.
want your movement to be good and subconscious to where you don't even have to worry about it, it takes sweat. I'm talking, you know, time and money wise, the investment's not that great. Hard work wise, the investment is great. So whether you've got a basement or a garage or a backyard, or if your range is close enough by, and depending on your work and life schedule, I know some people have legitimate excuses as to why they can't. But 1 hour out of the day of movement training every day, that's what we need for everything like that. That's happening in many different places on every single stage on at a match that lasts 3 days long, right? And I never have to think about any of that movement a single time.
I
My
love that
job,
idea.
my job is now easy, and I'm not bleeding mental energy and worries and messing up footwork. I'm not bleeding in any of those ways because I've sweat so much in that training.
Mm,
Yeah.
great analogy. I love it.
Anyway,
Yes.
t-shirts coming. Sweat saves blood.
Okay. I want one of those, please.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
glad you brought
yeah.
that up. Yeah, that
Yeah.
position illustrates what you're talking about perfectly.
Yeah, and it
And
happens all the time where when I shoot a stage, especially when it's a part-time stage, just because those tend to look really exciting and fast and cool and fun.
sure.
Someone will mention something about usually it's my footwork, and they'll ask, "Oh, I noticed that you did this," and it's always something technical and specific, cross step, hip shift, or whatever. What was your reasoning behind that, or why did you put that in your stage plan, or why'd you do that way? And I'm over here like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Hmm.
All I was
That's
doing was putting the gun on the next target.
right.
My
I love
body is extremely good at that because I've spent thousands of hours developing movement patterns and making those movement patterns subconscious and normal for me without me having to think about them, right? In my training. It's the sweat.
Bam, that's beautiful.
Yeah. All right.
Wow, what a takeaway.
Let's go ahead and watch the other part-time stage. This one's from Area 5, also a combined stage win.
Yes. Okay, and want to make the point that this is a visual start.
Crazy.
Yes, and so these are, I believe this is at Cardinal in Ohio. I was
Yeah.
not there. Okay.
Yeah. The one
Uh,
time the weather was nice.
the one time, yeah, geez. And these are turning targets, guys. So they will appear. That's his cue to start, and then they go away. There's no timer. You just have whatever the time is, and once the target is gone, you can no longer. You have nothing to engage. So here we go.
That was nice.
That was awesome.
Let's get the GoPro video.
Yeah, that was awesome. Okay, notice he looks to the targets
Are
to
you
watch
ready?
them move.
Stand by.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So same same thing as the last one. I don't think I had any extra physical effort put into going fast on this stage.
Hmm.
I always want to be at my top possible speed, and getting the gun where it needs to be next, that's always the same, right? That should always be at what my normal speed is, which in my training I make as fast as it possibly can be. So The only real place in it,
Stand
especially on
by.
a stage like this, where it's very clear, it's shoot the targets here, run over there, shoot the targets there, run to the next spot, shoot the targets there, right? There's just two things. You're either standing and shooting, or you're running in between places. So if they're running in between places, if getting the gun where it needs to go next and having it ready when it gets there, that's the movement stuff. That's all going to be the same. If I put any extra physical effort into trying to do that fast, I'm probably just going to overrun positions more. I'm going to bring the gun down, throw it around more, so I'll have to set it back up when I get there. Even though those things might be faster in quotes, they take more time. Um, so just like on the last part-time stage, if there was anything different I did mentally, effort-wise on this stage, it was simply more of a resignation not to stop. So for example, if I knew, waiting on this stage to start, I knew in my mind the setting for this stage was if I call an unacceptable hit, I'm not sending a makeup shot, and I'm definitely not returning to a position to, I'm definitely not, bobbing my head back to the port if I think I missed to send another shot, because then I'll miss the next three targets entirely. So that's the only difference. Just a little bit more resignation to not stopping as opposed to extra physical effort to being
Can
fast.
you address straight stage strategy for some viewers that may be watching this and going, well, why didn't he draw on the middle in this start position? Why didn't he draw on that target in that middle port versus running to the left? Can you speak to that real quick?
Ah, yeah. So I think the par time on this stage, it was lower than the last one, I think, by a couple seconds. So it was something very spicy like that. For three different positions and nine targets, it was something very challenging. And remember on the last video, I pointed out my first shot, and this isn't bad mental game. This is just a statement of fact. And if I want this to change, I will put in the work and dry fire to change it. But my first shot doesn't really happen under a second. So if I'm on a 6 second par time stage, I'm either going to spend that 1 point something seconds before my first shot standing here doing nothing, or I can do that while I'm covering some ground to a position that's going to have to get covered anyway.
Beautiful. Guys, so he's
Yeah.
using, let's say we know the draw on that target, that given target. Let's just say our draw is a 1.5. Can use the dead time, which is his movement split from position 2 to position 1. He can use the draw and absorb it within that movement split, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I want to illustrate the fact that you didn't you're exploding out of this position. Look at your angle.
Check out
You're
that. Check out
driving.
that. Check out that soleus and that gastrocnemius and that vastus lateralis right there, and that biceps femoris.
Yeah. It's very distracting. It's impressive. We should we should have put some Tanner on there first.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Um, you don't have a lot of time to get the gun out of the holster and up along your, to present it to this target. But it also illustrates how aggressive you are to get there. Again, though, based on what you're saying, you're not necessarily, well, for example, in this situation, leaving this position, where would you want your head to be? Is it just on drive, or is it get the gun on the target?
So obviously it's different when the gun still has to come out of the holster first. And in retrospect, this is something that I've figured out and incorporated into my training. But you see how I'm already well into leaving this first position, and the gun is still, we can't tell exactly. It's either in the holster or still at the holster, one of the two. Maybe this would get treated a little bit more aggressively because it's a part-time stage, and a little bit more riskily and dangerously, knowing that even at the speed I'm going to do it, getting to all the targets is going to be a challenge. But especially for stages that are not part-time stages, I've decided that the gun needs to come out of the holster entirely before my lower body starts doing much of anything at all.
Yes. Yes,
I don't, I
100%.
don't, yeah, I don't want to be knocking that gun out of the holster while my legs are kicking it and bouncing it around left and right. It's not safe. There's very much higher chances of that gun hitting the ground unintentionally. So
Yes.
I think that's something that I've incorporated into my training since
Good.
then. It worked out here, but I remember making notes of that. As we walked the stage and stuff, I remember thinking to myself, man, I need to leave here when those targets start turning, and I don't know if I'm going to have my gun out of the holster before I'm leaving here, you know?
That's
So
right.
anyway, it was something that's on my mind, but it's something that I've definitely, if especially if it's not a part-time stage on any normal stage, gun needs to be in your hands before your legs and lower body start doing much of anything.
Agreed 100%. And just to sort of clarify this concept for our viewers, at the B and beep, your hand is going to the gun. And I have another video on my YouTube in regards to this and in regards to hand speed, but it's not that we're delaying our lower body movement. It's that your hand is getting on the gun and starting the draw ASAP. And
Yeah,
it can do it much faster than you can take a step. So we're not saying stand there until you draw the gun.
yeah. And what's nice about this stage is I have all that ground to cover to the first position. So even if I'm gonna snatch that gun out of the holster really fast and maybe not have the best grip I've ever had on it,
Mhm.
I have time. I have time
Yes.
between this one and next one to, again, I have the gun getting where it needs to go. The first thing that movement does, that's going to take some amount of time here, and I have something slightly less than that amount of time to get it ready by the time it gets there, which in this case would mean not just indexed on target and stabilized to whatever necessary degree depending on the target, but also an appropriate grip on the gun. I have time to do that here. So especially in
Nice.
retrospect, I clearly didn't do this at the time, as we can see from the freeze frame here. Um, but it's definitely something that I've tried to incorporate in my training is guns got to come out first, especially if there's movement before shooting on the stage. Guns got to come out first. Doesn't matter.
Excellent point. This second position is so, the way you acquire this position is so, oh, I really, really like it. What I want you to take note, our viewers, is, and it's even more radical, but his body, his angle of his body towards the left, he's decelerating extremely hard here. He had the gun up well in advance. Right here, he's looking at the position, and then he's going to transition into looking for the target.
Yeah, yeah, you can really see the head turning.
Yes.
Which again, it goes just back to our transitions and putting the gun on the next target. Obviously, because there's retreating here, from position one to position two on this stage, with this current position being two, there's retreating. So with going backwards, you can't always just put the gun directly on the next target. I've kind of get back there first, and then that's gonna happen. But you can see that the pace at which that happens is accelerated because there was less time to do it. Because part of getting the gun where it needed to go was retreating, and you can't exactly have it, can't exactly have it up and indexed that whole time.
That's right. That's right. And this freeze frame, I want our viewers to take notice. Joey has fully got the rightmost target in this port acquired, even before he can see the middle or the left target. This is what I
Mm.
talk about being prepared. He can literally start engaging that target before the other targets are even visible, guys. That takes preparation. That takes getting the gun up, and it beautifully illustrates that where I could overlay another shooter over Joey here. The gun is probably not line of sight, and he's probably not going to acquire that target until the entire aperture is exposed of all those targets. So that's Joey. Really, really great stuff here.
It's big stuff, and just like we talked about earlier in this video, and then on the last stage we broke down, it's very much a subconscious skill that you get from a large volume of high quality movement training, right? Getting the gun where it needs to go and having it ready when it gets there. I'm not thinking about or trying to do these things, right? Having the gun up, finding the next target first, and then especially, the large amount of information that could be taken down about the movement that's going on, right? You know,
Yeah.
lowering this much of your center of gravity, turning the hips this much, right? Shifting weight onto the left foot so you can get a wide right foot out, like the positioning of the left foot, right? Where I plant that left foot and put my weight on it here while I'm stepping my right foot out, that's there's a most correct spot for that, and then every other spot is some degree less correct than that to be ideal for this position. And that's something that's completely subconscious, that those are decisions that my brain and my body are making without me knowing it, based on the visual information of where that gun needs to be, and the fact that I've spent so many reps working on exactly those things in my movement training. And we spend in my 1 day class that I teach, we spend a big chunk of the day working on those two movement things. Because those two movement things together, again, that's what movement accomplishes in our sport. It gets the gun where it needs to go next, and it has it ready to fire when it gets there. And putting those two things into your movement in a high volume of reps lets things like this right here happen without really any planning, without really any effort. If I know where the port is, my feet are going to do it. If I know where the port is and where the targets are, my feet are going to do what they need to do, and it's going to look like this every single time.
That was awesome, Joey. Excellent, excellent stuff. That gives me personally as a shooter a lot to work on.
Boom. It's that's what it's all about. It's all about that sweat. Sweat saves blood.
Man, I'll be looking for that T-shirt too.
I'll get it out there as soon as I can.
Very good.
We've got a couple other from the past that we need to make too.
Joey, thank you so much for your time and for imparting this knowledge. Our viewers find you to set up a class.
So if you want to host one, have one at your home range and take it for free yourself, you can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, or you can go to my website. My email and stuff is on there. You can get to me, and then for classes that are already scheduled, those are all on my website, sauerlandcoaching.com.
Beautiful. That sounds great. I highly recommend it, Joey. Keep up the great work, okay? You're doing phenomenal things. So,
will do. Appreciate it, Travis.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. This has been What Makes Us Run Great. We'll be back soon with another one. You have a great day.